Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2, Freedom Uncensored. Goodness me. I'm loving this. I really am. I just think that it's so awesome to be able to share my innermost thoughts with you guys and have you come along for the journey. And today's episode's a little bit of probably a sensitive one. I know it's potentially going to annoy people. But hey, I wasn't here to make people comfortable, really. And I think that the things I want to share with you today about what I've unveiled, particularly in light of the market fluctuations and the economy and things like that, are really interesting. And I think it's going to help you understand your business in a different way. So let's just start from the start, shall we, in terms of how I came to know some of the things that I know about what sells in the hair and beauty industry when it comes to consultation process. Now, bit of my backstory, obviously some of you know, some of you don't, but being a psychologist, a lot of my training and my development was in psychology. And when I left prison, and again, didn't serve time, but worked in a prison environment, one of the things that I specialised in was in behaviour change. So basically, I was very skilled at being able to take individuals, being violent offenders, that were absolutely couldn't be more disinterested in changing their lives. If you can imagine they're in a prison environment, someone tells them that they need to do a violence treatment program. You could imagine the looks on their faces when I walk into the room and I'm like, hey, everybody, who wants to do some violence treatment? You couldn't imagine that was going to be met with extreme enthusiasm. And I can tell you now, it definitely wasn't. So what I came to refine or get really good at was motivating people to do work that initially they didn't want to do. And in a more gentle kind of space for that, effectively, psychology often has people presenting with lots of different issues that are going on in their life. And all that, although that's quite painful to them, they're often really complicated when it comes to making the changes that they need to either resolve the problems that they've got in their life or to start to feel better, because humans are complicated. It's like from a common, you could sit there and think, well, you've got a problem, why wouldn't you want to change it, right? But it's not as straightforward as that when it comes to someone embarking on a behaviour change process. Anyway, so when I left the prison and I opened my skin clinic, in my mind, I'm in there doing all the things, I'm learning about the industry. It's really awesome. Super pumped that I get to show up and, empower people in a different way, look after them in different ways. So obviously I wasn't just looking after them psychologically, or my team wasn't just doing that, because our ethos was that through self-care and self-investment in skin treatments, that people would feel a lot better about themselves, a lot more worthy, a lot more confident, so it was definitely sort of, even though we knew we were doing that, there was a part of me that kind of went, well, I'm in the skin industry now, so I'll kind of just park my knowledge about psychology over there, because I don't really need that a lot, like the practical skills of psychology. Now I really need to learn about the skin and the cosmetic industry and how they do things, right? So, here I am, I'm doing courses, I'm getting trainers in, like people that really know how to consult, identify concerns of clients, treatment plan, map, like really strong clinical training was where I thought we needed to go. And don't get me wrong, that was part of it. Like, there is definitely a place for being clinically skilled, right? As a professional, whether you be a hairdresser, a beautician, a therapist, if you don't know what you're actually doing technically, that's a problem, right? It is a problem, you know. But at the same time, and I'll go into this, but there is a balance to that, I suppose. And because if we get too caught up in the clinical side of things, we get clients that are very lost and confused and overwhelmed and don't really know what we're talking about half the time. Right? So here I am. I'm in my clinic. I get the best trainers. I get the best advice. You know, I get the best. I put my team into a position to really provide the best clinical service that I can possibly provide as part of our service delivery. You know, because we're here to make people feel good. We're here to get results. Now, to be honest, like, I've only ever done business in an economic crisis. Right? So I opened just before COVID. 2017 is when I opened my business. Now, let's face it, I had no idea what I was doing for a few years. So I wouldn't even say that, like, I got to access the golden years. You know, and the golden years are, I hear business owners say to me, "Oh my God, there was a time where you just put a product in front of someone and they just buy it." Like, what's all this hoo-ha of now? It's really hard. And I'll come into that later on when I come to explain what I think's gone on with the economy. But the reality was, I never had that golden experience of just putting something in front of someone and they just buy it. You know, because a lot of my business was built definitely during COVID. We were doing online consultation to all of Australia during that time. We had actually made more money during COVID than we did in the silly 2 years prior, when I just had no idea what I was doing and I was trying to work everything out. But I really hit my skates during COVID, and we pivoted to an online skin treatment service and an e-commerce business, and made more money during that time. And then obviously when we reopened, that's really when the scale happened for us. There was no downturn. There was no, you know, because we figured out, I suppose, the magic formula for being able to sell during economic crisis and really uncertain times. And I would probably say even now, and I know now because obviously I mentor people now who are in this different climate, still lots of economic crisis and uncertainty and fluctuation, possibly worse now than when it was just post-COVID. There's just we're in recession and there's different things going on that are pressuring client spending and the like. But effectively, my whole business experience has been in some form of economic turmoil. So I never had the cruisiness of you just put something in front of people and they buy it. It's always been, in some sort of unstable time that I've had to figure this out. Anyway, so things sort of changed for me when we'd done all the training. We had a really good structured clinical consult. And then, as I've mentioned before, we were really, really good at marketing. So, I could press a button basically on my Facebook ad account, my Instagram account, and just produce truckloads of new clientele. That was not an issue. Once we figured out the system for doing that and filling up our appointment books, new clients were never, ever a problem. So what happened though was that with a flood of new clients, we've got this really competent, evidence-based clinical consult in place. And what we actually started to see was all of the clients were coming in. We were delivering this primarily education-based consult. And what I mean by that is that, we're understanding the problems, what it is that they need help with, and then we're providing a really good, solid treatment plan, home care recommendations, and we're backing that up with a lot of clinical evidence. right, as to why this needs to be the pathway. What actually happened was people nodded and just walked out. So we were getting lots of clients come in, new clients come in, but our retention was like, we were lucky to be retaining like 20% of the clients. Like it was a disaster. People weren't buying retail, I think the other complication to this was that when you engage in social media marketing, you're effectively dealing with a cold audience, right? So these aren't people that have walked in off the street and decided that they want some skin treatment. Like these are people that we've put ads in front of, right? We've physically put ads in front of these people. We've created a very compelling offer, right? Very compelling. So compelling that they've gone, I might just try it, right? So effectively, we're attracting clients, and I might actually draw this for you guys so that you can, I love a picture, I love a representation. Hang on, let me get this right. Share screen, whiteboard. So, because I want to talk to you about the clientele, and I think this will help you understand why the consultation had to shift. So if I just draw, and I'm a terrible drawer, guys, don't shoot me on this. No, actually, no, I don't want to draw like that. I'm going to call this stages of change. All right, so recon. Contemplation. Prep. This will make sense in a minute, guys. Action. Lapse. And relapse. Right. Cool. So this is to cut a really sort of basic, simple representation of this. This is called a stages of change model, right? And effectively, when we think about any services that we're providing whatsoever in the hair, beauty, and skin industry, effectively what we're asking people to do is make change. And at varying degrees. If you're treating a skin concern, there'll be a whole lot of changes that you're going to ask the client to make in terms of their lifestyle, how they're using their skincare products, how often they need to come and see you. Same with beauty. People have a hair removal or they've got a beauty service, and there might be things that you're asking them to do to maintain that the hair removal. They've got to come in and see you. They might need to exfoliate, they might need to moisturize the area, they might need to lashes, they might need to, comb their lashes, look after their lashes, come and see you every 2 weeks. Hair, they potentially need to use a toning shampoo at home. They need to use these hair treatments. They need to come in every 8 weeks. Like there's whatever we're doing in getting people the outcomes that they want in the hair, beauty, and skin industry, we're asking them to change things, right? That's in essence what we're asking them to do. So when I started running all of these ads, basically the people that we were getting in were people that were interested. So they weren't completely not interested, otherwise they wouldn't have responded to the ad, right? They were interested in what we had to offer, but in no way, shape, or form were they committed. Right? They just happened to see something and go, that looks nice. Click the link. Oh, okay, book an appointment. Right? So we were having really cold traffic coming in that were in what I call a contemplation stage of change. Interested, but not committed. Right? Because what we know is that for someone to move to this stage, right, there does need to be, for them to take action, there does actually need to be high levels of commitment and motivation beyond just an interest, right? So at the time, we're getting truckloads of these in, we're delivering a clinical consult, and we are not, through that consultation delivery, we are not hitting the mark on being able to help someone move from here to here, which would have them start to engage in the plans and the products that we were recommending for them. Most of them were going, that's nice, bye-bye. And I'm like, shit, this ain't good. How do I stop share? Hang on, guys. This ain't good. Because I'm spending all this money, I'm getting all of these clients in the front door, and we're losing them all. So that's when I thought, well, I know a bit more about this than just, obviously I've come into this industry and I've tried to do what the Debbies have told me to do, right? Which is, if you just educate people, they will buy things. And the reality was, it wasn't true. I was bringing all these clients in and none of them were buying and none of them were staying. And I thought, well, that doesn't work. Let me have a look at this and bring about what I know when it comes to motivating people, right? Because remember, I was the queen of motivation. I'd take 12 prisoners who wanted to poke me eyeballs out and transform their motivation and their commitment levels over 26 weeks. And by the end, they were bloody eating everything that I was throwing on the ground. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir, whatever you say, miss, by the end of it, right? So I thought, well, what if I brought in some of that into the consultation process, some of the questioning, some of the unpacking of the psychological elements of the client that I know need to happen to increase the likelihood that we're going to move them from contemplation through to an action phase, and then have them commit to the things that we're asking them to do, right? So when we started to do that, now this is known as the motivational consultation method, and it's what I coach in the coaching program now when we train consult. When we implemented that, everything changed, right? When we restructured the consult to include the motivational interviewing, just gone blank, section, and it wasn't just about education. We actually ended up dramatically shrinking down the education component of the consult. Our retention went from like 23% up into the 80s. Like, it was unbelievable, the transformation that it made. Retail went through the roof. Like, when you started getting people committed and invested, particularly these clients that just come interested but definitely not committed, because I feel like the social media style of advertising is bringing in a harder level of clientele. Everything changed, right? So the challenge that I see now, and I'll come back to the economic climate and how that even relates to all of this. And for me, that's just how we did business. So we didn't suffer. Once we nailed that, we just kept going from strength to strength in terms of our sales and our retention, and we just kept growing. Even though after the honeymoon of post-COVID sort of wore away and clinics started and salons started to feel the pinch, and we've been feeling the pinch, I suppose, ever since. We didn't get that because we had a structured consultation process that was working on motivation, which meant that directly doing that, we were tapping into higher levels of investment and commitment from people, which meant when the economy really hit the skids, right? Now, that was probably after I sold my clinic, but then I was mentoring and I was implementing this process into the clinics and the salons that I was mentoring. We didn't feel the pinch like other people did. And in fact, some of my clients were having the biggest numbers on record. No shit, they were like, and they still do. They've managed to avoid the cost of living crisis taking them out, because the very essence of actually working with people from a motivational perspective means that when things get tough, right? So when cash flow gets a bit reduced or budgets get a bit tightened for clients, when you're engaging with them motivationally, the very essence of doing that allows you to modify what you're doing based on their capacity to commit, which means that you still keep a level of commitment there and they don't go away. So these clinics and salons were not suffering at the degree that all the other people were, because they had this motivational component and this ability to adjust and customize what was going on according to the client's needs and the client's capacity. So they didn't go backwards. They kept going, right? So it created almost like a buffer to the economic climate, because when you work with motivation and commitment in a consultation process, you're working with more than just a result, just getting a result for people. Because what happens is people might be interested in getting a result, but as soon as their cash flow gets tightened, as a lot of clinics and salons in the industry's found, the first thing that was disposable, right? If you weren't working on motivation and commitment with clients in consultation, and you weren't modifying and customizing based on the fluctuating financial position of the clients, or, you know, the willingness that they had to keep up with their appointments, if you didn't adjust that, what happened was they just disengaged. So we had a lot of clinics and salons feel the pinch, because effectively the clients were all dropping away because they didn't do this work with their clients. And then the Debbies are running around going, chicken, the sky is falling, it's all the economy's fault. When it's actually not. It's just that they'd been doing business in a way that meant that they'd probably been lucky to get the results that they were getting, just using an education-based consultation for such a long period of time. But when we shook up the soda can of the economy, that didn't work anymore. And my opinion was it probably never worked, right? Or it got them by, and the existing clients just come to know that that was just the way that things were done, and they were selling by default. And it was only until things changed that the vulnerability of the businesses became apparent, right? Because fundamentally, what I know to be true through my business experiences is that education alone actually doesn't sell. It just doesn't, right? So, you know, the industry have obviously been through a lot through the economic fluctuations, as far as being the disposable service, being the appointment that the client's happy to, you know, stretch out or get rid of altogether, right? You know, and if you haven't been able to adapt your business around the changes in economic climate, or you've been unwilling, or you've been a Debbie and just dig your heels in and go, oh, well, this is the way that we do things, and, you know, it is what it is, then you will have suffered, and you'll probably still be suffering. So what do you do? Right? And this is, I want to be really clear on what needs to happen for you to balance out your educational based consult, because effectively being able to sell requires you to work on someone's motivation as much as it does, not even as much. Education is actually, in my opinion, probably about 20% of the consultation process. And I know that's going to piss some Debbies off bad, right? There's people in this industry that educate the shit out of people, right? And stick by that as being their main methodology of making money, right? And you can continue to do that. But what I know is that makes you more vulnerable to uncommitted and unmotivated clients, right? So really your education should only be around 20% of your consultation. And in fact, most of your consultation should actually be about questions to your clients, actually wanting to find out as much information as you can about, and I'll get into the details of that in a moment, but as much of the client's needs and what they're looking for as you possibly can, right? But the education component, no more than 20%, and really simple. I look at the education as being just the why. This is what we need to do, and this is why we need to do it. And the why is as simple as make it valuable to the client, not the why as in we start reeling off all of this technical terminology and it gets really fucking complicated and the person's just sitting there with their, you've lost them. The why is what the client has asked you for, you tell them what you need to do, and then you link it back to what they've asked for. And we're going to do this because reel off the things that they've noted as what they want to receive as a result of the outcome. We'll do this treatment because it's going to be able to achieve X, Y, Z, which is what you've asked for. Such a simple why. That's all it needs. Now, the asking questions component, everyone asks questions in their consult, but it's the type of questions that is the key. And the questions are not just about clinical questions, like getting the clinical information that you need. In fact, that's the minority of the questions that you should be asking. Your questions need to be about really having an in-depth understanding of not only the concern, right, or what it is that they've come to you for, but also how motivated they are to commit to the process. And you need to have conversations about that, and their capacity. So for me, their capacity is about what's their level of financial investment that they're prepared to commit to, and how much time can they actually commit to that? What are their expectations around not just what they need to do, but what they're willing to do, right? Because if you don't get to the bottom of that, the reality is you're going to produce some recommendations that are good in theory, right? It could literally be the best practice bells and whistles scenario that you could produce clinically. But when the client looks at it, they're overwhelmed. They can't afford it. It's too much. So as a result of that, they just say no. Now, I'm not saying that you don't tell them what the ideal situation looks like, the ideal prescription. You still do, but you also need to be willing to come back to their limitations or what they've got capacity for, right? Based on what they've told you if you've asked the right questions, right? So that in a nutshell is the process that you need to take someone through when you're working on motivation in a consult, as much as you are when you're working on motivation conversely to educating somebody, which should be a smaller component of the consultation process, in my opinion. Now, this is going to piss people off. I get it, right? Because we've got some very well-trained people in this industry, right? Very well-trained. You are probably watching this as a very well-trained professional, very good technically. Whether you be a hairdresser, very good technically. Whether you be a business owner of a beauty, a skin business, you're probably top of the game in terms of your technical skills, right? But that, even though that's important in terms of the quality of the service delivery, right? It's not the thing that you should be portraying to the clients as being the forefront. Don't get me wrong, having authority and leading in a professional way is important. You can't have a client feel like you don't know what you're talking about. But over-educating and flexing your technical muscles, and this is probably what Debbie does, talks about all the ingredients and the bloody niacinamides and the this and the that and the, if Debbie's talking and the client's sitting there and Debbie's doing most of the talking, that's a red flag, right? She's talking in lots of technical, overwhelming, confusing language. This consult's become more about Debbie than it has the bloody client, right? Because this makes Debbie feel good to be able to flex her technical muscles and show the client everything that they know about XYZ, but it's actually not about that, right? Debbie feeling knowledgeable and useful is not more important than helping the client, right? And the ego-driven way of consultation is what happens when clients leave saying no because they've simply become overwhelmed and confused, right? Because the consultation has become more about Debbie flexing her technical muscles and showing the client everything that they know about XYZ, and less about presenting things in layman's terms so that the client understands it and they know what they're consenting to and they're really excited to consent to that process, right? One of my superpowers in the prison industry was that psychology can get really fucking complicated if you want to explain some of those concepts to people, right? So I got really good at breaking down really complicated psychological concepts and presenting it to prisoners that were lucky enough to it would be lucky if they had a grade 2 level of reading, most of these guys, because they didn't do school. Some of them couldn't even read, right? So I had to take these concepts and reproduce them and put them in front of these prisoners in a way that they could understand. Otherwise, they weren't going to be able to invest in the change process they needed to be able to get, to live a good life. And you've got the same problem as a technician, right? That you need to, and also be able to empower your team members to be able to take clinically or technically sophisticated concepts and present that to a grade 2 level of understanding, because that's the dynamic that you're dealing with on a daily basis when it comes to helping people with technical concerns, whether it be related to their hair, their skin, or whatever it is. You can make that as technical as you want, but the reality is they won't understand it. And this is where the commitment and the motivation piece comes into it, that clients walk away uncommitted when things have gone over their head. And you would be very surprised to learn how little sophistication you need in explaining the whys technically for somebody to be able to commit to, be motivated to invest in what you have to offer. It's very little to do with how sophisticated you've presented the pathway, right? So I hope that helps clarify what needs to be done now more than ever. When we're in a situation where people are making decisions about where they want to put their money, you don't want to be the expendable service. And if you are overcomplicating the way that you communicate with your clients, you will be the expendable service, right? The economy's shown us that. Otherwise, all of these clinics and these salons wouldn't have lost clients or had clients come less frequently if they had readjusted the way that they were connecting and engaging with their clients and getting to the bottom of how much capacity these clients had to stay committed to that process, even if it meant changing some things around. I would love to know in the comments, guys, your thoughts, your experiences, any reflections that have come up as a result of today's episode. Love you all. Keep doing great things. And I hope this has been valuable.